Oh, hello, this is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak. Prepping is like exercise to me. For a long time, I really don't like to prep because it seems like an intrusion of my everyday life. But once I get used to it, once I realize that how important it is prepping in helping with my cooking, just like exercise in helping with my health, I decided that I'm going to embrace it. And once I start doing it on a regular basis, it becomes a routine. I really don't think about it anymore. Now, one thing that people always told me is that, oh, prepping takes too much time, and I really don't have the time to do it. And it is difficult for me to convince them, actually prepping do not take that much time at all. In fact, if you spend about 1 to 2 hours a week for prepping, you can cook a meal every night for your family of 4, and that is very little time. But if you don't do the prepping, if you don't do that 1 hour or so a week, you will spend far more time during the day when you try to cook. And this is one of the things that prepping before you cook is one of the probably the greatest distractor from cooking, because you don't want to spend the time to cut everything up. And besides, it is very inefficient. It also do not take advantage of the vegetable that you have in the refrigerator, and quite often you're going to forget about it. So today I'm going to take you through the prepping step that I did very recently. I actually prepped 6 different vegetables in less than 30 minutes. So I'm going to take you through all of the process to give you a kind of sense of what it actually takes. So instead of like I did before with other recipes on prepping, I would do cut and paste and then so kind of just show you the highlight. But no, I'm going to show you from each step from one ingredient, one vegetable to the other, and so you can see what it takes from beginning to end. Okay, so let's go do it.
It took me a little while to get going with my prepping routine. In the beginning, I was kind of reluctant. I would prep a little bit here, prep a little bit there, and sometimes I would miss a week, and sometimes I would miss even 2 weeks. And then I realized that, I should prep more often, because the week that I missed, I end up with doing far more than I would have if I had prepped in advance. So I think it would take you a while to really get into it, but once you get into it, it will become a routine that you will do it regularly. Prepping green onion actually is probably one of the least favorite of all that I do, because it requires quite a bit of finesse, and you need to cut it carefully, and it's a lot of time, all these little pieces just go all over the place. But then green onion is an important part of my cooking regimen. I use green onion instead of regular onion. In fact, I don't use regular onion that much at all. And I use green onion because green onion has many properties that you find in regular onion. For example, like the end part of the green onion actually tastes just like regular onion. And then as you move up toward the tip of the onion, you start to get more of a milder taste. And then the green color of the tip of the onion add a lot to the food that you cook. So when you mix the lower part and the upper part together, green onion not only has the characteristics of onion, but it also has characteristics of other type of onion like chives. And so from that standpoint, green onion is very versatile. And because of versatility, I'm willing to take the time to prep it. And as you can see, that when you cut it toward the end of the green onion, it's kind of challenging. You have to be really careful, not to cut your finger. So over the years, I have kind of figured out what's the best way to do it. In fact, I've tried many different ways to cut them, and now I think I can do it fairly well. Green onion is quite inexpensive, and I usually buy a bundle of green onion. In this case, I generally buy from Aldi, and they comes in this plastic bag, and their quality is really good. And usually the green onion I purchase from them, I don't have to clean it very much. In fact, I don't clean them at all, because they come pretty well cleaned. Sometimes if you buy green onion from stores that are not packaged together, they might be a little bit more debris or like sand or soil. You just rinse it. But actually, from Aldi, the one I think they rinse it already, so I don't really have to clean them at all. Now, a lot of time I usually use 1 package of green onion for the week, but in this case I bought 2 packages because I have a cooking class actually that week, and I was going to make fried rice. Green onion is great for going into fried rice, and actually it can go into many different things, which you will see me using it a lot. Usually 1 package of green onions will last me for about a week if I do not have a cooking class or I do not have people coming over for dinner. Over the years, I have developed different techniques to prep the green onions. I think now I have settled on the best way to cut the green onion, that I can cut all of them at once, is to line up the root end, and then I will start from the root end, gradually work upward. And of course, you need to be very careful in grasping the green onions so that you can bundle them together. As you can see, that I use that typical method by bending the tip of my finger inside, so that I will have my knuckle, which will be facing the knife. So when the blade comes down, it will touch my knuckle first without cutting my fingertip. As you move up with the green onion, as you can see, I struggle a little bit because now I have a hard time holding them together, but still it seems to be working okay. Using a good knife is actually very important. In here I have a kind of like a they call it a vegetable knife. I don't know the name for it, but it is a thicker blade. This is a more heavy knife, but with a thick, wider blade. And this kind of knife is supposed to be really good for cutting vegetables. As you can see, I also use a sliding motion in cutting it. Toward the end, I might have some piece missing, so I will chop it a little bit more. But in general, it works quite well. This is the kind of size I like because I don't want them to be too big, because then the bite will be there will be too much onion, so to speak. And in this way, even if the onions are not well cooked, or even if it's not cooked, it will mix with the food, and you kind of get a nice flavor without having this overwhelming onion flavor. So when I put it into my plastic container, I try to mix the green one and the white part together, so I will have an even distribution of the onions when I put them on food, either stir fry them, or I usually just put them on top of it. So it is fairly simple, and like I said, they have pretty good shelf life, and I usually able to store my green onion in the refrigerator for about a week. That is kind of the limit. Once it passes a week, they start to get wilted and they won't be as good. The next vegetable I'm going to prep is tomato. Now this is winter time for this when I make this video, so the tomato is not great. So I have some Roma tomato here, and I bought from the store, and actually on sale, which is not a bad price at all. And so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to cut up this tomato. I'm going to use it mainly for cook with like a tomato and egg dish. So as you can see, I sliced the tomato into like a sliver, because that is the best way to cook with the egg, because the egg can fold around the tomato. Now, cutting the vegetable in various sizes, there are some plan to it, so they're not random, because there are a principle of called the optimal flavor size, that you cut this tomato into this particular, or cut any vegetable into a particular size, that will give you the best flavor. So I find tomato in this particular case, for this Roma tomato of their shape, this is actually the best way to cut them. I sometimes cut them differently, but majority of the time I cut the tomato into this particular shape. The next vegetable I'm going to prep is the broccoli. I really enjoy broccoli. I like the flavor of broccoli, and broccoli is always be part of my weekly prep. And also broccoli is very inexpensive, and I bought this bunch of broccoli for about $1.50. And so I use the broccoli, every part of it, and in fact, in early days I actually throw away the stems, because I don't know what to do with it, and it seems to be a lot of work, and a lot of time the broccoli stem has kind of fibrous, and so you need to peel it, and that seems to be extra work. And after you peel it, you don't have much left. So before I tell you how I prepared the stem, I cut the floret off, and then I cut the floret into bite size, because since I stir fried it, I want it to be the right size that it will cook efficiently. But at the same time, I don't want to cut it too small. As I have mentioned earlier, that is a idea of that there's an optimum flavor size. Any pieces that when you cut it too small, they might lose the flavor. They might get mixed into other food. But if you cut it too big, then they become too dominant. Just imagine when you have a piece of broccoli on your table, on your plate, how big would you cut it? And that's probably the kind of size that you want to aim for. And after I cut the broccoli into the small size, again, I store them in a plastic container separately from the stem. Usually the floret, actually, they have really good shelf life. You can store them up to as long as a couple of weeks, and they still look pretty good. In fact, I find that by cutting it up and store it separately, they actually have a longer shelf life than if you store the whole broccoli in the refrigerator. I actually, over the years, I always like broccoli stem. I find broccoli stem has some really great flavor. The problem with broccoli stem is that you will find, particularly toward the end part of the broccoli, the skin become thick, and they can be quite fibrous. So unless you peel them, if you eat them as it is, you will have to spit out the fiber. Now, that actually prevents people from eating the stem, at least prevent me from eating the stem. However, I discovered that if you chop the stem into very fine pieces, like what I'm doing here right now, you actually will not taste the fiber, the nature of the stem. So I decided that I will use this chopped up broccoli and use it in the fried rice. Because in the fried rice, after you chop up the broccoli like this, the stem, first of all, they cook very quickly. And secondly, is that you will not taste the fiber at all. And this turned out to be an excellent way for me to use the broccoli stem. Now, I'm sure you probably will find some other way to use it. And I have not tried to use the stem in other fashions. But I think chopping it up into small pieces is definitely one way to make use of the stem, and this actually allow you to use the stem in such a way that add a lot of flavor. When I add it to the fried rice, I find that I don't need to add too much salt, because the stem of the broccoli brings a really delicious flavor to the rice. I have never seen anybody use the broccoli stem like this before, so maybe people do, but I think this is a really excellent way to take advantage of this broccoli stem. As you can see in here, I'm trying to chopping it up into even smaller pieces, and with the free stem I have from that $1.50 bunch of vegetable, I can create quite a bit of chop up stems, and it will make a nice serving of fried rice for 3 or 4 people. Again, I think the nice thing about doing prep yourself is that you see various possibilities while you are trying to work with the vegetables. In the beginning, like I said, it seems to be like a lot of work, but after a while, you don't really think about it, and you just do it, because it just becomes a routine, and it brings a lot of pleasure to me. At least I find that I can make use of things that otherwise I in the past will pass over, and that's kind of give me a sense is that, oh gee, I'm getting something for free, and it's a good feeling, and to able to make use of everything you have. Now in here I want to just mention quickly about my cutting board. I use the cutting board that has no groove. You probably noticed that some of the cutting board has a groove around it, to retain, say, if you are cutting up a roast, and the juice from the roast might go into the groove. I use a cutting board without any groove because precisely when I do the chopping, things will not get fall into it. And on top of that, I use in this case, it's like a dough cutter. and it's good for scraping up whatever left on the cutting board. And when you cut up things small like the broccoli, it's nice to have something like that, so you can scoop up everything easily. And on top of that, whatever is left, you can just scrape it off the cutting board rapidly, and it just saves a lot of time for cleaning and just make life a little bit easier. So as you can see that I have my own routine in my prepping process, and I find it very easy to follow each week, and I just do the same thing. And every time when I do it, I make small improvement here and there, and I'm sure you will adapt to your own prepping approach, and based on how your kitchen set up and the kind of equipment that you have. But the sooner you have the routine, the better off it's going to be come for you. So the next vegetable that I'm going to prep is cauliflower. I use cauliflower as often as I use broccoli, partly because cauliflower is always available at supermarkets. It's one of the standard vegetable in almost all supermarkets. Cauliflower is a little bit more expensive than broccoli, but they are more substantive, and I like the flavor of cauliflower as well. I like the in some way cauliflower is not as strong in flavor, but then it takes on other flavor very well. So I use cauliflower for a number of different things. Sometimes I cook them directly by itself, but a lot of times I cook it with a mixture with other vegetables in creating a vegetable medley. As you can see, prepping the cauliflower is really very straightforward. I use a knife to cut off all the leaves that's surrounding the cauliflower, and then I will use the knife to cut off each of the larger florets. Again, like the broccoli, I used to throw the stem away, and because somebody told me once, they said, oh, the stem of the cauliflower is pretty bitter. And then one day I decided I just give it a try because I have an extra piece floating around. I cut off a small chunk and I tried it. I said, oh wow, it actually tastes pretty good. And cauliflower, I always like it actually not cooked, because cauliflower, like I said, is very mild in flavor, but it has that kind of a sweetness that I really enjoy. So here you see what I'm doing is that, again, I'm cutting the cauliflower into, I would call it the optimum flavor size, as well as the size that are efficient for cooking in a wok with a stir fry. By cutting up into this particular size, cauliflower actually can cook very quickly. Otherwise, cauliflower takes longer to cook in comparison to broccoli, because it has a more dense structure. And so in this case, cutting down into the appropriate size is really quite important. With cauliflower, like I mentioned earlier, that I really enjoy the texture of cauliflower, and quite often when I cook them, because I cut them into this relatively small size, I can really control the texture of the end result. And usually I try not to overcook it, because quite often when you eat cauliflower that are completely cooked, they become too soggy, and in fact, in that case, it takes away the natural flavor that normally comes with it. Cauliflower also has very good shelf life in the refrigerator. You can store cauliflower up to, after you cut it and put it in a plastic container, you can store up to maybe even 2 or 3 weeks without them visibly turning black. Well, that's what cauliflower will happen. When they store for a long time, you probably notice that they will turn black. But after you cut it up, I think that, at least my impression is that the shelf life in fact is longer than if you store them as a whole head. Again, the advantage of after you're cutting it up is that you can use whatever you want. And I probably will show you some more in the future, is that most of the time I really do not measure out the vegetable that I want to cook a dish. I just cook it directly from the box and from the plastic container. And so now I'm going to show you how I'm going to cut up the cauliflower stem in very much the same way. I start out by slicing it into thin pieces, and then I cut it into strips, and then I chop it up. As you can see that there are quite a bit of stems in here, and you can use it for many different things. Of course, now it's very popular. They call it cauliflower flour. They actually cut up the cauliflower into very small pieces, and you can cook it like you cook rice. This is basically the similar principle, although I don't like that as much because I don't like cauliflower overcooked. I like to have that texture because it holds back the natural flavor better. Now again, I turn it around and I just chop it up into small pieces. I use cauliflower again mainly in fried rice. I have not explored using cauliflower in other type of setting. I should say the cauliflower stem in other type of setting. But I'm sure there are many other possibilities. And one potential dish I'm thinking about to put together is to take this chop up cauliflower stem and chop up broccoli stem together and cook them with hamburger beef or hamburger meat, and then cook them all together. And I think that might be quite flavorful. It might be something that would be very attractive to eat. Again, here now I'm just chopping up the rest of the cauliflower. Again, I find the knife that I have with the wide blade and with some good weight does a really good job for chopping. And I like that knife very much for that particular purpose. I generally have 2 to 3 knives, and I use it for different purpose. If I use it to cut meat, I will use a different knife, which I will tell you a little bit more about. Also, you can see here, this particular chopping board worked really well for me. I like a chopping board that has a lot of room, so when I chop things up, it will not go all over the place. So as a whole, you can see that you can take advantage of every single bit of that cauliflower. The green leaves that I remove from the cauliflower, which maybe one day I can also find use for that too. But right now, I feel that I do not waste anything from that cauliflower and able to fully make use of what I have. So up to this point, I've spent about 20 minutes in the prepping process. I start out with green onion, and I actually do 2 packs of green onion, which I normally would only have done 1. And I also have prepared some cut up of tomato, some broccoli, some cauliflower. Probably you can say that if I have not decided to prep the stem of the cauliflower and the stem of broccoli, it would take less time because just cutting the floret off takes no time at all. So again, sometimes it's up to your choice whether you want to make use of all the different pieces or not. So the next vegetable I'm going to prep is purple cabbage. I like cabbage, but in the past I really do not know what is the best way to cook cabbage. And a lot of times people boil cabbage, and that doesn't taste very good at all. And until I realized that stir-fried cabbage is actually really good as long as you don't put a lot of it in it. So then I start to use cabbage more as a condiment in supplementing with other vegetables rather than as a primary vegetable. And then I discovered that I should use cabbage like purple cabbage, which gives a wonderful color. And now if I use this as a condiment, I can really enhance the color of the dish. As you can see, some of my recipes, I use purple cabbage a lot just to give color, as well as to give flavor and give texture. So I usually do not buy a big head of cabbage because I know that I will not use a whole bunch of it. And so I usually choose the smallest head I can find in the grocery store, and then I cut them up again in here into bite size so that they cook rapidly. Cabbage actually cook really very nicely, and so I will cut up most of them into this bite size and use them to mix it with other vegetable to create a vegetable medley. They are, in my opinion, they are really very tasty, particularly when you mix it with broccoli or cauliflower. In fact, I did a cooking class with some junior high students, and I have cabbage in it. And a couple of the students said, "Oh, I hate cabbage. I never know cabbage can taste so good. So I leave a little bit of cabbage left, particularly if I cannot fit it all into my container. So as you can see in here, that the big leaves, usually they are not as good, they're a little bit wilted because they're on the outside, but I don't want to waste them. So I decided I will chop it up into small pieces. Again, I will use them in fried rice. They add beautiful color to the fried rice. So here I just chop up the big pieces. Since I have some of the little pieces left behind too, I mean the one from the main head, so I'm going to chop them all together and save them. I find cabbage is again, it's very good in providing flavor, and if you cut it up into this small size and you put it in the fried rice, it adds texture to the rice, it adds flavor, it adds color, and really there's nothing no negative aspect for adding this into fried rice. So I usually store them again for quite a long time. They have long shelf life. Cabbage can be stored, as you probably all know, cabbage can store for quite a while, and you can store them for 2-3 weeks without any detection of any change in their quality, in color, and everything just still looks great. So it is a good vegetable to have in the refrigerator, that you can use it for whole multitudes of purposes. And I really think this is one thing that I always make sure I have in my refrigerator. So over the years, I have developed a strategic approach in my prepping. Ultimately, I really do not prep 2 hours every week, and most of the time I would say I do not spend more than an hour and a half each week maximum in my prepping. And a lot of my prepping overlap from one week to the other. For example, this purple cabbage I just prepped probably will last me for about 2 weeks at least, if not longer. And so consequently, I only need to fill in. So a lot of time the prepping is more like a fill-in prepping. I prep the things that I need. But there are a few things I always prep, things like green onion, because they don't last more than a week. The next item that I'm going to prep is also one of those items that lasts for a long time, and once you have it, you can use it over several weeks, and that is yellow squash. Now I have a different video that I prepped zucchini, but since I already prepped it earlier or last week, and I have enough left over, so I did not do any for this week. And you notice that I actually prepped quite a bit today, although up to this point I have only spent about not more than 30 minutes. The reason for that is that because I was going to give several cooking class demonstrations at a local high school, and as well as at a junior high school for my friend. And so I'm get everything prepped to go over there. I will cook several dishes. Actually, I will have them to cook it, and I will basically coach them while they do the cooking. So here I have some yellow squash. Again, yellow squash is great. You probably by now you can see that I choose many of my prep. A good part of it is of course of the nutrition, of their texture, of how they're going to come together in a dish that will create the type of combination that I'm looking for. But at the same time, you probably notice that color. So I have now prepared several of those preps that all comes with different color. Now there's several things about the theory about color. One is that color is important in food because it also represents the kind of chemicals that in the fruit. And the chemicals usually we call phytochemicals, plant chemicals. They have vitamins and many other nutritional values. So the more color you have in your vegetable mix, the more likely that you are getting nutrition from everywhere. So here's kind of where I'm going to stop now because I have the prep orders, and now we are up to about maybe 27 minutes since I started.
So as you can see, it's not bad at all, right? We did 6 vegetables. We started with green onion, followed by tomato, and then broccoli, cauliflower, purple cabbage, and then yellow zucchini. You have 6 vegetables now, all cut up, ready to go. Now the beauty of having this vegetable is that just imagine now you are like an artist. You have all this paint on your palette. You can go in and create. One day you can mix the tomatoes with broccoli. The next day you can mix with green onion with other type of vegetables, and so now you have this basic repertoire of vegetables that are available to you. Actually, I will show you in another video that will prep other vegetables that to increase that repertoire. And remember now, you don't have to prep the same vegetable every week because many of those vegetables can last more than 1 week. So you basically kind of fill it in. So the end result is that as the time go along, you might have in your refrigerator 10, 12, or maybe 15 vegetables at your disposal that you can cook with. And I can guarantee you that by having those vegetables right at your fingertips, you're going to have much greater fun in your cooking. You'll be more creative in what you can put together. And on top of that, you won't waste any vegetable because you know exactly what you have and they're all ready to go. You're ready to use it. Ever since I started doing this prepping process, I have reduced my vegetable waste from 40%. I used to waste 40% of my vegetables because I forgot about them and then did not use them, to now I waste less than 5% of the vegetables that I brought home. So that's a big difference. And so I hope you, from this video, I hope you gain some, at least some confidence, at least, or being persuaded that, yeah, you can do this and it is not hard at all. So again, this is Tak Chung from Walk with Tak, and if you would like to receive notifications of any video that I've posted in the future, please subscribe to my YouTube channel by pressing the subscribe button below. Well, nice talking to you, and hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.